guys, Cam here again with another book review, and we are back with Coho, Colleen Hoover, her newest big published release of this book. She wrote this book independently. A lot of people didn't read it, so she figured out whatever legal stuff she had to figure out, and she ran it back through her big publisher where everyone finds all her books, Heartburns. Okay, this book was good. I'll start with that. I'll read the back of it. You guys know how I do this. All my glasses are out there, so you guys are going to have to suffer through my poor reading again. You guys know how I format these at this point. I'm going to read the back of it. There's no inlet on this one because I got the paperback. Read the back of it, give you a basic overview. Back half of it, I'll be doing spoilers. So before we get into that, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the bell so you see everything when we go live. Here we go. Damaged people recognize other damaged people. It's like a club you don't want to have a membership to. Okay, so right there. That's the big famous quote everyone's seen. It's like, what book is that from? It's from this one. Bea Grimm has only ever known a life of poverty and neglect. After surviving by any means necessary, she finally has a hard-earned ticket out of Kentucky with a full ride to Penn State. 2 short months before she's finally free, an unexpected death leaves her homeless and forced to spend the remainder of her summer on a peninsula in Texas with a father she barely knows. Begging the summer to go by quickly and hoping to remain as invisible as possible, Bea wants nothing to do with Samson, the wealthy, brooding guy who lives next door to her father and who couldn't possibly understand where Bea is coming from or what she's been through. But with an almost immediate connection too intense for them to deny, and futures leading them to opposite ends of the country, Bea and Samson decide to stay in the shallow end of a summer fling, neither of them realizing that a rip current is about to drag both their hearts out to sea. Okay, this is my second nautical theme book. I guess I really like a good nautical. I do have lighthouses tattooed on my body. Nicholas Sparks, big on the by the sea. So I just finished It Happened One Summer. That was by the sea, and this one by the sea. Okay, let me get my notes here because we have the main character of Bea, her stepsister Sarah, Sarah's boyfriend Marcos, and then you have Samson. So it starts off the book with Bea at home in Kentucky. She's starving. There's no food in the house. Her mother's a drug addict. Her mother ends up overdosing and dying. That night, she calls her father, who she sees like once a year, and doesn't tell him the truth and says, hey, I need to come stay with you for a while. She's got a full ride to Penn State. She's playing volleyball. She's not that passionate about volleyball, but it's her ticket out. She ends up moving in with with her father, her stepmother, and her stepsister. Her sister has the boyfriend Marcos, who has a friend Samson. Samson lives in a house across the street, directly across his patio, or from his bedroom. He can see Bea's room, which that'll come in later. So let's start with a general overview of the book, if I can, without giving away too many spoilers other than the fact that her mom died. But you're going to find that out within the first chapter anyway, so it's not that much of a spoiler, okay? The book is good. They fall in love. Obviously, here's the thing. I'm so tired of the enemy to lover trope, though. I'm so tired of let's be mean to each other. Let's even tell each other there's absolutely no chance here. Okay, got it. And then they, of course, fall for each other. And they're like, well, what about all that other stuff? And it's like, well, I'm pretty emotionally unavailable. So that's where they end up going, hey, there's an obvious connection here. We kissed, whatever. They hadn't made love yet. And it's like, well, I don't do emotions. I'm not trying to do emotions either. Bea literally has a rule that he's not allowed to hug her. Nobody's ever hugged her or held her. So there's no intimacy. They're only allowed to fool around, right? Okay. So right there, you're like, okay, we go from enemy to lustful connection. Now, no emotions, only lust. Fine. They somehow say that they fall in love with each other, even though she's not really even allowed to know his name, his father, where he's from, what school he went to. Well, then there's an incident where some of his identity and his background is revealed without him wanting it to be, and it's kind of forced him into a situation where now he has to be honest with her. So they make a date, hey, August 2nd, at the end of the summer. You have to tell me everything. If we're going to keep doing this, you at least have to tell me the truth. And he goes, fine, I will. I just like you so much. I think if you know about me, you won't want to be around me anymore. And she at least asks, like, you didn't assault anybody or anything, right? Like, you didn't kill anybody. He's like, no, nothing like that. So everyone just thinks he's this rich guy. And so there's some twists and turns. It's a good book. Their character development is slow, but when it gets there, it's good. The biggest thing I'll give you guys before I get into spoilers, the biggest thing I appreciate about this book is it takes on complicated relationships between dads and their kids after separation, divorce, whatever, and it shows very well how miscommunications cause kids to hurt a lot throughout their life. She's 19 when the book starts, and for 19 years she thought, she had this deadbeat dad that didn't give a shit about her, and all the while, you'll find out that that's not necessarily the case, and it's a very good read. So if you don't want to know the spoilers, go ahead and hop out here, just like, subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll see everything else. You can come back to this second part after you read the book. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now we're into Bea and Samson's relationship where they're openly fooling around. Bea's stepmother is pretty forward and is like, hey, do you need to get on birth control? There's a fight that ensues. This was kind of crazy. Bea and Samson are in the ocean. Bea gets stung by a jellyfish, takes her out of the water, and is pouring vinegar on her. I didn't get this when I first read, like when I was going through it. I didn't catch the dialogue that made what happened next make sense. So he's pouring vinegar on her, and she's going, Samson, that hurts. Okay, you guys will get it now that I'm explaining it, but it didn't make sense to me, right? So she's going, Samson, that hurts, because she had just been stung by a jellyfish. He's pouring vinegar on her. He goes, it'll feel better in a minute. Just wait. She goes, Samson, please stop. He goes, not yet. I'm almost finished. Well, then her dad comes beelining what you think, like out of the house, and socks Samson in the face. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? What did he do that for? He's helping her. Miscommunication. He thought they were boning. I didn't get that until afterwards when then they replayed the dialogue back, and he was like, oh, shit. And he's like, my bad, yo. Like, my bad. And the dad was still like, I better never catch, whatever. He thought his daughter was getting assaulted outside. No one would ever, question that. So it was kind of a weird gray situation because he was actually helping her with a jellyfish sting. And I like the fact that they didn't have him pee on her because then the punch would have been warranted. It was a weird gray area. It was vinegar. We've all heard the stories. We've seen Friends. Okay. Like I said, they were off-putting towards each other. Bea tells Samson all of her secrets before she even tells her family, her dad, her stepmom, her sister, anything. Samson knows about her mom dying, that her mom was a drug addict, and also told her a pretty big secret, which was that a guy who she kind of considered like her first boyfriend, their only relationship was he would pay her $40 to blow him, to give her a ride home. That shit broke my fucking heart because she was like 15 when she was doing that, and she was doing it to get money for food. It wasn't really about the ride or anything like that. And that's her only idea of what romance was. So when Samson and her first met, he handed her $20 out of nowhere, but she had just eaten a piece of bread off the floor of a ferry. And she thought, just because of her experience with men, that he was trying to elicit her. And so she breaks the camera and stuff, and it was a big deal. But you feel for Bea so hard during this because you can feel, if you know people that grew up with addict parents, or you've been around people, especially women who have addict parents, man, it shuts them the fuck down. Emotionally, they can become so cold and so hard and so emotionless, and that's what she was, man, where she literally did not let people hug her own dad, nobody. And when that moment finally came and they held each other, it was the first night that they slept together, well, that's when the book really takes its plot turn, right? So all Samson's secrets come out in a flash of a moment, because the morning after they make love, she wakes up to Samson being arrested by the police. Okay? Right before that, they had been taking a walk on an isolated part of the beach. They had found some remains of a human with a t-shirt on that he said, "I know who this is. We can't call the police. They didn't even know this person was missing, and they'll just throw it in an unmarked grave. Please, this person wants to be put back in the ocean. Just let me do that." You knew it was this person named Rake. You knew that Samson somehow knew this person. If we're being honest, we all kind of knew it was his dad. Well, it was. His dad died, and his dad's name, Rake, was famous from in that area as being like one of the only people from that town that had been lost during a major hurricane in a long time. So he was dealing with like all this. You find out he was not living in the house across from her. He was squatting there. The family came home, caught them in bed, and had him arrested. Well, came to find that they knew of like 2 other places he was staying. In one place, he ended up starting a fire accidentally. I think he was trying to fix something, and he ended up starting a fire. Well, he ended up going down for like 2 counts of breaking and entering. He got arson, and he got something else that I don't remember. So he ends up going to prison. Right as they're like, "I love you. We're going to get, I've grown heartbones," is why the name of the book is that. "I've grown heartbones, and my heart can feel love and things again just because of you." So they both kind of admit that. They're like, "All right, we're going to figure this out one way or the other." But again, he still hasn't told her any of the secrets. She found out because he got arrested, and she's battling against every person in her life, being like, he's not a bad guy. He didn't do this stuff because of what you guys think. He did it because you find out his dad died when he was 13. He literally lived on the streets from the age of 13, and I think he was 20 in the book at the time of the book was writing. So he had been out on the street for like 7 years on his own. And it was like, yeah, he was living to survive. He was squatting in houses because he was in a vacation home area. So these were people's vacation homes. So he knew their schedules. And, he was breaking in, but he kept everything nice. He repaired things around people's houses. There was an old lady who in the town who he constantly worked for free. And you found out it was because she let him stay with him for a while and like fed him and stuff. And then that ended up being, when he got arrested, that lady's son was a lawyer who defended him. Now, he went from facing like 10 years. He ended up getting sentenced to 6, serving 4, and I think he got out early on good behavior. So you assume, they don't really say, you assume he did like 2 or 3 years. So he does 2 or 3 years. Bea ends up going off to Penn State. She becomes a lawyer out of passion for just how messed up the justice system is. She found a log in his backpack he kept a log of all the places he stayed, what services he rendered while he was there, how much he was paid, and like he was going to go and like pay those people back or whatever. Like you could see he was going to do something of equal value for them at some point to justify him staying there when they didn't know about it. So yes, he was still doing something wrong, but he was trying to make it right as best he could. So Bea knew he wasn't a bad guy, so she waited. Not really waited though. She didn't put her life on hold. She dated like 2 other guys that went nowhere. You don't find this out until after he gets out of prison. She's waiting for him there. They're both shocked. "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you waited. I can't believe you're here." Blah blah blah. They end up together. Find out that the lady the old lady, ends up leaving Samson her house. She knew his situation. She knew when he got out, he was going to need a place. Her son was fine. And when she passed away while he was in prison, she left him a house. So he was just so overwhelmed because the day he got out of prison, life gave him everything back. The woman of his dreams, all his truths and his secrets were clear. His debts were paid. Everything was done. He had a house. He could live. He was on parole, but, she was like, we're dedicated to figuring this out. Like, she was already giving him shit because she hadn't checked in with the lawyer, and he had already been out 4 hours. So the lawyer's like, you got to check in with your parole officer within 7 days. But, like, you knew they were going to be good. And it was really awesome because the book was so heavy. Like with her mom being such a piece of garbage and openly neglecting her when they still lived in the same house. Her mom didn't know anything about her. You found out that the dad was trying so hard to be a part of her life, was constantly checking in on her. The mom was throwing away letters, wouldn't, tell him when she reached out. And anytime he sent money, mom just bagged it and shot it up in a bag in her arm. So it was like, man. Well, she was a meth head, not a heroin addict, but it was like, it was so dark and so heavy. I'm kind of glad they didn't match Samson's dark and heavy with hers. Now, I'll say, on the scene where they're walking down the beach, they find bone remains, and he's like, hey, be cool, just let me get rid of this. Nobody's going to do that, let's be real. Unless you straight up tell me, hey, this is my dad. I know this is my dad. Like, even still, man, come on. But then you find out he couldn't go to the police anyway. He had open warrants out. He was going to turn himself in after he told Bea the truth. It was a good book. Honestly, I have to say this is probably my favorite Colleen Hoover book so far. There wasn't a lot of like super dark to the point. Like Verity was dark and evil. It Starts and Ends With Us was dark in a way of like, oh man, there's some fucking monsters in this world. Thank God that's fiction. But it's like, it brings light to real situations in the world. This brings light to situations of people who are struggling. And again, I love the fact that you find out how hard her dad was working, and she finds out, my dad's loved me this whole time. My whole life, my dad's loved me. He had pictures of them on the beach together, just memories she didn't have. He's like, I always tried. Like, I'm so sorry I didn't do better. I definitely should have done better. He owned that. But you were happy to see that she got to feel love that she had missed for so long. There's so many different dynamics to life, right? And I've been in relationships with so many women that have different relationships with their parents. Either one parent is dead, they're adopted. There's a lot of different. One parent just openly isn't around, or they are around and they just don't give them the attention that they should. It's weird when you see how badly parents can damage their kids in any situation. Growing up in the 90s, we used to think, oh, having a divorced household breaks a family. Not necessarily. There's a lot of families that break because there's parents that are there every single day, but they're drunk, they're high, they're not paying attention to the kids, they're not doing whatever. And it's like, people just think, oh, you're adopted, that must be tough. And a lot of people's experience, they're like, yeah, it is tough to not know. But some people don't find out until they're in their 30s. Some people go, no, I knew from the time I was 2 and I don't care. These are my parents. And some people find out to figure out who they're, there's so many different ways in life that life can just try to completely fucking break you. And it's always emotionally. It always ends up dealing with your love life. And I think Colleen Hoover does a fantastic job in this book of just bringing awareness, especially to the people that aren't spoken about, the children that don't get seen, that don't get heard, that train themselves not to say anything about mom and dad's poor behavior. And, I think it's great. Colleen Hoover, we'll go 4.5 out of 5 stars. 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really like the book. I think everyone should check it out. I got the newer cover of it. I've seen the other cover where it's white and it's got 2 skulls on it. I think I like that one better. The pinwheel is a tattoo that she ends up getting. Her and Samson end up getting matching tattoos. She gets a pinwheel, and she gets him a hurricane that looked like Hurricane Ike. But like the radar version, it was cool. So, all right, guys, check it out. I'll see you in the next review. Love you.